Hi everyone, welcome to Elvis Presley Past, Present and Future, where we're continuing on with our Elvis journey. So let's get straight into it. By May 1955, Elvis and the Blue Moon Boys officially had a new member, drummer DJ Fontana, or Dominic Joseph Fontana. He played with the group already on the Louisiana Hayride. Fontana was the house drummer of the Hayride and played mostly behind the curtains for different acts and backed them up. When the Hayride began booking Elvis and the Blue Moon Boys on tours with big name country acts, DJ Fontana went along as their drummer, and in May he was on board as a permanent Blue Moon Boy. DJ recalls, "Elvis had this charisma about him. I don't think anybody could ever put their finger on what he did or how he did it. On stage, he could fill the audience out in about 5 or 10 minutes. He knew the songs they wanted to hear for some reason, and he could work that crowd to his benefit. He was really good." When Elvis's contract was up with the Hayride, DJ went with him. In early 1955, the Presleys moved to 2414 Lamar. They were there for a few months. Though the home still stands, it is no longer a private residence. It's now a business. On May 13, 1955, Elvis appeared at the new baseball park in Jacksonville, Florida. Not yet famous, Elvis demonstrated his power to drive hundreds of teenage girls into delirium during a show. At this point, Elvis hadn't yet appeared on national TV or had a #1 hit, but he did have a record on the country and western chart. During the performance, Elvis teased the screaming girls by saying he'd see them backstage after the show, prompting a mad rush towards the stage and riot that spilled into the streets. A group cornered the singer in his dressing room and tore his clothes off in their competition to grab a souvenir. Elvis had to be rescued by the police from what has become known as the first Presley riot. This was also the show that caused Tom Parker to realise Presley's potential. It was at this point which Colonel Parker was completely sold on the growth potential of Elvis. Elvis spoke of the riot in a 1956 interview. He said, "Mum and Dad still haven't got over all this hoopla about me. Mama was down in Florida once when the girls mobbed me. She was afraid they were hurting me. Shucks, they were only tearing up my clothes. I didn't mind a bit. I told her, 'Mama, if you are going to feel that way, you'd better not come along to my shows, because that stuff's going to keep on happening. I hope.'" August 6, 1955 was Bob Neal's 8th anniversary at the Country Music Jubilee. It was at the Overton Park Shell where Elvis began his professional career. Elvis performed together with Webb Pierce, Sonny James, Wanda Jackson, and a new unknown singer with the name of Johnny Cash. But now Elvis was the star of Neal's playbill. The show was jammed with an overflow audience for the show, and several hundred were turned away. Local amateur photographer Robert Dye recalled one performer loaning Elvis his guitar after Elvis couldn't find his in time to go on, and was pretty agitated after Elvis returned it with 2 strings broken. Performing on stage at the Louisiana Hayride in Shreveport on August 13, 1955, that night Elvis sang his first record, That's Alright, his current first national country hit, Baby Let's Play House. He also rocked the audience with a cover of Chuck Berry's Maybelline. Scotty Moore and Bill Black had no contractual ties to either Phillips nor Elvis. Neal was struggling at the time to accommodate his new client's success, and following a meeting with Tom Parker, Elvis agreed to let Tom Parker take some control of future bookings and promotions. Colonel Tom Parker's involvement in the music industry began as a music promoter in the late 1940s, working with such country artists such as Minnie Pearl, Hank Snow, June Carter and Eddie Arnold, as well as film star Tom Mix. During this time, he received the honorary title of Colonel in 1948 from Jimmy Davis, the Governor of Louisiana. His involvement with Elvis Presley began when he booked Elvis as the opening act for Canadian singer Hank Snow. On August 15, 1955, Elvis Presley was signed by Hank Snow Attractions. Parker and Neil worked together to promote Elvis, using their own Hank Snow tour to book him and tour him. Although Neil remained Elvis's official manager, Parker was becoming increasingly involved in the running of his career. As Elvis was still a minor, his parents had to sign the contract with Tom Parker on his behalf. Part of Parker's role was to secure a new recording contract with a bigger label. Elvis had been at Sun Studios since the beginning of his career, but Sam Phillips, the owner of Elvis's current label, was aware that for Elvis to have any kind of successful future in the business, he would need the backing of a much larger label. Despite this, Phillips was not keen to let him go easily, advising Parker that he would require $40,000, which is equivalent of US dollars $386,000 in today's money, to secure the release of the Presley contract. A completely unheard of sum at the time. Parker immediately went to work to find a new label for Elvis. Both Mercury Records and Columbia Records showed interest, although their initial offers were nowhere near the $40,000 requirement. RCA Victor, Hank Snow's current label, was also showing interest, but they were also put off by the cost of the contract. However, RCA Victor producer Steve Scholes was convinced that Elvis's style of music would be a huge hit with the right label, and he began talks with Parker. RCA made it very clear they were unwilling to go above $25,000 for a practically unknown singer. But Parker persuaded them that Elvis was no ordinary unknown singer. In September of 1955, the Presleys moved to 1414 Get Well. It was the last of the Presley rentals. They reportedly paid a rent of $85 a month. Elvis next appeared at Ellis Auditorium on November 13, 1955 for two shows, one at 3 p.m. and one at 8 p.m. on Bob Neal's Western Swing Jamboree. He was top billed over Texas-born and Princeton-educated Hank Thompson, the star of Western Swing and Honky Tonk, top country act Carl Smith, Charlene Arthur, and Sun artist Carl Perkins, who was just a few weeks away from recording his first big hit, Blue Suede Shoes. This would be his last performance there as a Sun artist, because 8 days later, RCA bought out Elvis's recording contract with Sam Phillips. In November, Parker and Snow persuaded RCA to buy Elvis out from Sun for $40,000. And on November 21, Elvis's contract was officially transferred from Sun Records to RCA Victor. Snow attended the signing, thinking that Elvis had signed a management contract with Jamboree Attractions, which he owned with Parker. However, that was not the case, since Elvis was still under contract to Bob Neal. The only document that was signed on November 21 pertained to the record label transfer, in return for a larger financial part of the deal. Neal agreed not to renew his management contract with Elvis after it expired in 1956, allowing Parker the opportunity to claim the job for himself. On November 28, 1955, RCA presented a bulletin. In a bulletin, their new acquisition, and announced officially the change from Elvis to RCA. December 19, 1955 was the day that Elvis and the Blue Moon Boys' third performance of the year at Ellis Auditorium. Earlier in the day, he decided to go shopping. He spent $39.04 at Harry Levich's jewellery store in the Peabody Hotel and $50 buying new clothes at Lansky Brothers on Beale Street. In the evening, Scotty, Bill and DJ performed a Memphis charity show at Ellis Auditorium to benefit the Memphis Press Schmidt-Mars Goodfellows Fund and the Commercial Appeals American Legion Basket Fund. Elvis and the Blue Moon Boys, along with Slim Rhodes and his Mountaineers and other musical artists, provided the singing introduction for an all-star wrestling program. In 1959, Elvis played 259 gigs. The impression left by those great amount of appearances is that Elvis's performing style was so instinctive that it blossomed almost immediately. Elvis moved around the stage from the beginning because he was naturally full of nervous energy and just plain anxious about performing before the public. Some of his onstage antics did turn raucous, and audience did get out of control occasionally, but most likely the hysteria was more or less controlled by Elvis. It was interaction between audience and performer, and it became part of the attraction of seeing Elvis perform live. The year 1956 still held more challenges and opportunities for him. January became a very busy month for Elvis. 2 days after his 21st birthday, he travelled to Nashville for his first recording session for RCA. The studio was on 1524 McGavock Street. Among the songs he laid to tape during that session was Heartbreak Hotel, along with I Got a Woman, I Was the One, and I'm Counting on You. The second day of the session also was the first time that Elvis recorded with his future group, the Jordanaires, Gordon Stoker. Gordon was the only member of the group that was there at this time. On January 24, 1956, Elvis signed another contract with Colonel Parker for a tour lasting 18 days. On January 27, 1956, RCA released Heartbreak Hotel with a B-side of I Was the One. The single sells over 300,000 copies in the first 3 weeks and was number one for an astonishing 8 weeks. On January 28, 1956, Elvis and the Blue Moon Boys, Scotty Moore and Bill Black, appear on Stage Show starring Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey and produced by Jackie Gleason. That's when his national TV career started. But at the time, his artistry caused feelings of fear and loathing amongst the older generation and some other people. His records were burned, and he was denounced from the pulpit by fanatical preachers, accused of being immoral. But all this didn't stop his fans, which gave the press and critics a hard time because of their counterpunching. A good example of this controversy is a letter from a guy named Jess Barton, who wrote the following letter to the New York Daily Mirror. The only people who enjoy Elvis Presley's insane bellowing are idiots, morons, and half-grade nuts. They haven't got an ounce of culture, refinement, or decency. If it was up to me, I'd have them all shot. Presley is nothing but a yelling whelp and a half-rate bird, a gyrating jerk, and an insult to the intelligence of the modern teenager. Jesse Barton, free thinker. But letters came in response immediately and jumping to the defense of Elvis. One response was, "You stated that I was a misguided creature. Well, I come from a respected religious family, far from being half-grade. I'm a good student in an important school. I am still an Elvis Presley fan, and the world could do without your brand of intellectualism." Elvis and his band performed widely around the South. They made numerous personal appearances, from high schools to country fairs. On March 26, 1956, Elvis's management contract with Neil had expired. The singer signed a contract with Parker that made him his exclusive representative. Later, when Hank Snow asked Parker about the status of their contract with Elvis, Parker told him, "You don't have any contract with Elvis. Elvis is signed exclusively to the Colonel." Colonel Thomas Andrew Parker, born Andreas Cornelius Dries van Kuijk, was born on June 26, 1909, in Breda, Netherlands. He was the 7th of 11 children. As a boy, he worked at carnivals in his hometown, learning many of the skills that he would require later while working in the entertainment industry. At the age of 15, he moved to Rotterdam, gaining employment on boats in the port town. At 17, he first displayed signs of wanting to run away to the United States to make his fortune. A year later, with enough money to sustain him for a short period, he entered America illegally by jumping ship from his employer's vessel. During his first visit there, he travelled with an educational tent show before returning briefly to the Netherlands. In 1929, he returned to the United States at the age of 20, finding work with carnivals due to his previous experience in the Netherlands. He enlisted in the United States Army a few months later, taking the name Tom Parker, the same name as the officer who interviewed him, to disguise the fact that he was an illegal immigrant. He served basic training at Fort McPherson in Atlanta, Georgia. He served 2 years in the 64th Coast Artillery, United States, at Fort Schaefer in Hawaii, and shortly afterwards re-enlisted at Fort Barracanas, Florida. Although Parker had served honourably before he went AWOL, this time he was charged with desertion. He was punished with solitary confinement, from which he emerged with a psychosis that led him to spending 2 months in a mental hospital, and he was discharged from the army because of his mental condition. Following his discharge, Parker worked at a number of jobs, including food concession stands and gaming carnivals. From about 1931 till 1938, he worked as a carny with the Royal American Shows. He began to build up a list of contacts that would prove valuable in later years. In 1935, Parker married 27-year-old Marie Frances Mott. They struggled to survive through the Great Depression, working short corns and travelling across the country in search of work. Parker would later claim that at times they had little to live on, as little as $1 a week. He found employment as a field agent with a local animal shelter, the Hillsborough Country Humane Society. The job not only offered him a secure wage, it also offered a rent-free apartment above the Humane Society in a remote part of West Tampa for him and his wife. With the society in need of funds, Parker set about using his promotional experience to raise money and awareness for the shelter. Through the fundraising, Parker found himself heading to Tennessee to find acts to perform at his charity events. Among them, stars such as Minnie Pearl and Eddie Arnold. Eventually, Parker began getting more involved in the music promotion again, this time for himself rather than the society. This partnership and these 56 tours were so successful that Elvis was to fulfill the promise given to his mother as a child. "One day, I will buy you a house." On March 5, 1956, he signed the purchase contract with a down payment of $5,000 for his new home on 1034 Audubon Drive in Memphis. The total price was $29,250, and the transaction papers were signed on the 8th of March and 12th of March 1956. The Presleys, including Minnie Mae, moved into the house the last week of the month. Sometime later, a wall with a fence was built around the property, and at the request of Elvis, a swimming pool was also being built. But more changes were made. Elvis converted the outdoor patio into a large den with a glass wall to look out to the pool. 2 wood and glass trophy cases, mahogany wood panelling, custom-made star-shaped light fixtures, and acoustic ceiling tile. Although he was the homeowner for 1 year, he made far more changes to the house than anyone else after him. The neighbours did not like Elvis. It is said that some neighbours regarded the Presleys as white trash, or hillbillies, or they viewed his performance as crude and sinful. Apparently not everyone on Audubon Drive shared these views. A few of the surviving neighbours explained that they liked the Presley family, but they didn't like the noise and confusion surrounding them. But no matter how the parents felt, the 60 or more children growing up on the street loved having the king of rock and roll live next door. The girls loved him. The boys saw him as a leader of the pack. Elvis was accommodating to them. He signed autographs, gave motorcycle rides, and played football with the guys. The Presleys were good to their neighbours. Those who met them particularly remember Gladys, feeding cookies to nearby children, or showing off her vegetable garden by the poolside. The year 1956 was the beginning of Elvis mania. He was mobbed everywhere he travelled. The Audubon Drive home became an unofficial tourism attraction in the city, especially when Elvis was at home. Dixie and Elvis slowly drifted apart after he took her to the school prom. Dixie remembers he was travelling. He was travelling a lot by that time, but he came home for my prom in 1955. By that point, he had so many demands and such a busy schedule. He also came to my graduation in 56, and we kept a good, close bond with each other. We had talked about getting married, but by the time his records came out, we realised that it was not going to happen. It was kind of a mutual thing. His career was going one direction, and I didn't feel that I could be a part of it. His career kind of consumed him, and there wasn't much time for anything else. Dixie continues. I cannot look back and remember Elvis and I ever specifically breaking up, because we didn't. No matter how far his fame was beginning to take him, we knew in our hearts we were eternally tied to each other. They no longer had a romantic relationship, but Dixie and Elvis still had a love for each other as friends and stayed in touch. Gladys had been broken about the breakup, as all her plans were invested in Dixie being the mother of her grandchildren. And as soon as her boy got this famous stuff out of his system, he was going to buy a furniture store or something, marry Dixie, and have a bunch of kids. But it was not to be. Dixie stayed in touch with Gladys. Dixie was there for Elvis when his mother died. Not only did she go to Gladys's funeral, but she also went over to Graceland afterwards, and she and Elvis talked alone for hours. This was the last time Dixie ever saw Elvis. Dixie had known her future husband, Bobby Emmons, since grade school. As Elvis got busier and busier in his career throughout 1955, he saw less and less of Dixie. That is when Bobby entered Dixie's life. When teased by his friends that his wife somehow ended up with him and not the king of rock and roll, Bobby Emmons replied, "That's right, Dixie knows who the real king is." In May 2021, over 65 years after she dated Elvis Presley, Dixie Locke Emmons finally published her personal account of her 1.5-year relationship with Elvis. She is considered Elvis's first serious girlfriend. She's still alive and 84 years of age. In March 1956, a further dream of Elvis's came true, the chance to become an actor. There were talks for him to make a movie, which led directly to a series of screen tests at Paramount Studios. Elvis flew to Los Angeles for a 3-day screen test, which were being held on March 25 through to 28 with Hal Wallace Paramount Pictures. The first day he performed a scene from Inga Williams' play The Girls of Summer. The second screen test was for a supporting role in Burt Lancaster's movie The Rainmaker. And the third screen test, Elvis gave a full lip-synced performance to his recording of Blue Suede Shoes, complete with his trademark gyration and sneer. A performance that persuaded Hal Wallace's partner, screenwriter Alan Weiss, to sign Elvis to a movie contract for 1 year, with the option of another 2. On April 14, Elvis had a next session at RCA Studios in Nashville, and was presented with a gold record for his hit Heartbreak Hotel. On May 15 again, Elvis gave a concert at Ellis Auditorium in Memphis. Elvis had appeared on the same stage just 5 months earlier in December 1955. In the interim, he had risen from a regional success to a national sensation. Elvis's return gave Bob Neal, his former manager, one last chance to bask in Elvis' glory and capitalise on the success of his former client. Neal, who hosted the Morning in Memphis show on WMC Radio, was the local promoter of Bob Neal's Cotton Pickin' Jamboree. On the final day, they gathered at Ellis Auditorium for the parade, then swept down Main Street through the business district, crossed over to 2nd Avenue and returned to Ellis Auditorium. Tickets are priced at $2.50 for downstairs and $1.50 for the balcony, with a separate section for coloured. Neal sold tickets out of his Memphis record shop until 3 p.m. the day of the show. On the evening of May 15, the auditorium was filled to a capacity and many were turned away. A crowd of 700,000 wild spectators had forced their way into the auditorium to stomp, shudder and shriek and sigh as Elvis made his way through his rock and roll repertoire. He was the blockbuster of Bob Neal's Cotton Pickin' Jamboree. Elvis shared top billing with Hank Snow, but the crowd obviously just came to see Elvis. Paul Malloy from the Commercial Appeal described Elvis' arrival at Ellis Auditorium. When police escorted Elvis's limousine, the limousine roared to a stop in front of the auditorium. Scores of youngsters were waiting with unashamed ecstasy. As he brushed by his young fans, his full lips parting in a lazy smile, one girl dropped her pencil and stood transfixed. She remained that way, speechless, until police whisked the good-looking idol away. Before Elvis performed, Bob Neal announced that he would be playing another show in Memphis on July 4 for the benefit of local charities. Since both halls of the auditorium were open, Elvis was forced to play either front and back of the audience. Uncomfortable with the arrangements, Elvis spent most of his time standing sideways or turning to face both audiences. Elvis twisted and turned and swiveled his way through a 30-minute show where the repertoire consisted of a series of rock and roll classics. So there he is, facing that way, and there he is, facing that way. So to turn to face the audience would have been a hard gig. Articles appeared the next day about his performance. Some articles said, when Elvis Presley slouched on stage, his pants too tight and his vivid green jacket too wide, the kids uttered a bitter-sweet moan. When he broke into his best-selling Heartbreak Hotel, some fell to their knees, some clasped their hands, some threw their arms about themselves in a sort of self-embrace and jiggled their knees. And another one. Across the aisle, another girl was literally scratching her arm with her fingernails, leaving long red welts. Tears poured down her cheeks, mussing her makeup. Some girls were actually striking each other with their fists, apparently unaware of what they were doing. And also, another report, he wears black pants, a white shirt, and a Kelly green jacket. Elvis worked his hardest. Perspiration was rolling down his face as he whipped out the songs which have made him a national idol. He joked and clowned, and you could sense the understanding between him and those who so eagerly follow him. It was a happy, spirited crowd. Elvis strikes sparks, and something in his fans catches fire. The crowd screamed its admiration of Elvis, and they made such noise during the performance that sometimes you couldn't hear him or his musicians. The atmosphere that is sometimes described as electric. June 11, 1956 was a sad day for Elvis. He flew home to Memphis for the funeral of his cousin Lee Edward Smith, Gene and Junior's brother, who had drowned. But also, there was a time to relax and have fun and amusement. He shopped together with cousin Gene Smith at Lansky's on Beale Street and visited with Dewey Phillips, Memphis' famous DJ. Dewey also accompanied Elvis on June 16, when he appeared on Wink Martindale's WHBQ TV show, Wink's Teenage Dance Party, and to promote his charity show at Rustwood Park on July 4. It was the first of 2 television interviews Elvis did with Martindale. Despite all the commitments, Elvis still had time to visit with his new girlfriend, Barbara Hearn, and to go to Libertyland at Mid-South Fairgrounds, an amusement park, to relax and enjoy himself. Barbara first met Elvis when she was working at Goldsmith's department store in Memphis with a friend named Dixie Locke, who was dating Presley. When Dixie and Elvis went their separate ways, he asked Barbara if he could take her out. Barbara said, "People sometimes say that Elvis and I went steady for a year. I always correct them. I went steady with Elvis for a year. He didn't go steady with anyone." There's a famous photograph taken by Alfred Wertheimer inside the home on Audubon Drive in Memphis that Elvis shared with his parents. In the photo, Barbara's in a white dress with dark polka dots. Elvis is slouched and shirtless. Barbara said, "People don't understand what's in this picture." She said he had just been outside standing in his new swimming pool. It was just being filled up with a garden hose. I was dressed to go out with him for the evening, all gussied up, and what we're doing is, he had just taken the train back from New York where he recorded some songs for RCA. He had brought back the recordings. They had not been released yet. We were listening to one of them. He wanted to know if I thought it was any good. I said yes, I thought it was. It was Don't Be Cruel. She eventually went to work in Washington for one of Tennessee's United States senators. It was there that she met her future husband. She saw Elvis very infrequently over the years and never lost her affection towards him. That year of 1956, she said, "I saw him go from being barely famous to a super duper star." She said, "From a boy to a man." Today, Barbara's 84 years old. So there we go. Another installment of our Elvis journey. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to make your comments, subscribe, and we'll do it all again next week. Have a good week. See you then. Bye.